3, 2, 1. Welcome to another Britflix.com podcast. My name is Stuart Wright, and today we are doing the usual 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. But before all that, I will be discussing a new documentary about the internet blogging pioneer and cultural theorist Mark Fisher, whose work analysed the intersection of music, philosophy, politics, and quite significantly, given his own battles with depression, mental health under late capitalism. The film is called We Are Making a Film About Mark Fisher. And with me today, I have writer-director Simon Poulter and the film's editor, Sophie Mellor. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
And given the way the film introduces itself at the start, I am now part of the film, having watched it. Is that right?
You are, definitely. You're part of the film because we're now going to discuss it.
Indeed. Now, just as a little bit of a sort of context from my point of view, and this is quite weird and eerie in of itself, given the title of the book. I came to Mark Fisher in the summer of 2019, personally, via the last book he published in 2016, The Weird and the Eerie. I think I stumbled across it because I'd come across the idea of hauntology, and that led me to his book. And so impressed was I by the book that I Googled Mark to find out more about him, found some K-punk blogs, and his Hotmail account. So I emailed him a brief message on the 11th of August, 2019, according to my sent emails. And I wrote, wanted to write and tell you, I just discovered your book, The Weird and the Eerie. Once I got to the chapter where you used the fall to define the grotesque, I was in, mind blown. Thank you. Sadly, it was a week or so later talking to a friend about how the book had inspired me to reassess the Falls City hobgoblins as a starting point for an urban folk horror film, that I found out that Mark had sadly died, barely a month after The Weird and Eerie had been published.
Yeah.
Which, having now watched the documentary, that feels like almost like a fitting way to have sort of found him, really, and like and matching up with the book. And it just, I'd completely forgotten I'd sent that email. It was I was basically looking to find when I'd read The Weird and Eerie, just searching through my records, and then to find the email, it felt really sort of it felt like a ghost in the machine, so to speak. But back to your documentary, and before we go into any details about the making of it, do one of you want to give us a sort of brief synopsis to what We Are Making a Film About Mark Fisher is?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a piece of work which is a metafiction about the life of Mark Fisher, and it deliberately is emergent, which means that it declared itself as a film before there were any ideas about what it might be. Mm-hmm. It was nearly 100% made on an Instagram account called at Mark Fisher Film, and the emergent process of working was to do everything, show all the cables hanging out, all of the problems that were encountered on the Instagram account, as if pre-production, the making and post-production are a public work and space. And so people began to follow it on Instagram. And then, for example, most of the music was actually found through people who contacted us, who came forward and volunteered to work on the project. So it's both an emergent and a decapitalized film in that it has no production budget. It's made by artists, not bona fide filmmakers. And it explores some of Mark's ideas about collective practice as a public spectacle.
And where can people see the film? Or how can people see the film?
Well, it's currently touring, I'd almost say the world, actually. So one of the most remarkable things about having this public space via Instagram is we've had people from all over the world wanting to show the film. So at the moment, it's just about to kick off a tour in Italy. Mm-hmm. So we're just finishing off Italian subtitles for that tour.
Right.
2 nights ago, it was shown in a secret location in Vienna. It's going to be shown in Australia, Mexico, Ecuador, Spain, Sweden, France, and it's also being shown in the UK. So it's just sold out its screening in Manchester. So that one's, hopefully we might find another venue in Manchester. It's been screened quite a few times in London. It's going up to Scotland and Wales. It's going to be shown in Plymouth in a couple of weeks' time. So one of the ways of distributing the film, when we first started off distributing it, was to show it in art colleges. So in a way, it was taking it back to where Mark was lecturing himself, these spaces of creativity, and taking it back to the art colleges. And then through doing that, we've also started showing it in lots of different spaces and also in cinemas. So you can kind of see it around the country over the next few months.
Okay, well, just for context then, we're recording this on the 2nd of Feb, and I guess for them to follow the latest news, people can go to the Instagram account, which is...
Yeah, it's at Mark Fisher Film, and you can also see the touring schedule on our website, which is closeandremote.net.
Brilliant. Well, I'll put that in the show notes so people can find that easy enough. And that seems quite... It's interesting then, now you've explained it, that obviously we're talking now because I saw it on Instagram and got in touch and said, could we talk about the film? So it's
exactly.
It's a very organic...
That's why you're now making a film about Mark Fisher, and everybody who attends the screenings, at the end of the film, it says, we're making a film about Mark Fisher, and now that you're watching, so are you. So it is a call to arms for people to have conversations and debates in the cinema or in the screenings. The conversation isn't over. We're not interested in just making Mark Fisher as heritage and biog. We're actually saying that, for example, a lot of Gen Z people, perhaps a tiny bit younger than ourselves, are really excited about Mark Fisher's ideas and writing. So although Mark's sadly not with us, his writing and a lot of his affective energy, as he might have called it, is still very prevalent in contemporary culture. So he's a live thing in both our film and in the way we look at the current political crisis. Okay.
So my original first question was going to be, why make a film about Mark Fisher? But I think you've just explained it.
Yeah,
it is to make a film is to carry on the thinking, I suppose, isn't it? Is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's declarative. We are making a film about Mark Fisher. It's also acts as a deliberate détournement, which is a situationist bit of language, but basically a takedown of platforms. So although it's on Instagram, we are actually trying to encourage people to get off Instagram and to think about other creative things that they can do. So we're using platform as a counter-extractive medium. And we've found that really chimes with a lot of people. Again, Gen Z people, they want to kind of recover something that was lost. There is an aspect of generational response to this. So perhaps the three of us in this podcast can remember life before the internet, and we might also remember boredom, for example, as a factor in our lives.
Yeah.
So for Gen Z, the internet has always been present. So the idea of not being present in an online space is as interesting as it is being in an online space.
I think also it's taking that online space and making it more useful. We're not really saying don't use social media, because social media for us has been amazing with this film, just connecting to people all around the world. But it's maybe, how can you use it differently? You don't just need to post pictures of your pet and what you had in the restaurant last night. You can actually use it to build your network in an unexpected way and sort of break out of your normal friendship circle, I guess.
And one really curious thing that happened, which might interest your listeners, is that when it started to kick off in Italy in December, it went rapidly from about 1,500 followers to about 11,000 in a few weeks. And what we discovered is that it had broken into alternative cultural networks in Italy. And we were having interviews with people, and we would mention the names of other people in Italy, and they would say, "That's my best friend. I've known them for years." And so the network had actually reached out into new pockets, which is interesting for us because we're interested in that idea of, as Sophie says, growing a network and then thinking about other things that can be done with it rather than just posting. So, for example, we posted a Mark Fisher reading list, and loads of people are interested in that. And then we thought, well, let's post other stuff that Mark Fisher was interested in. So there's a book called A Dream of Wessex, which is from like 1975.
Right.
And they're all of these kind of different references. And I think people are interested in using social media as a way to find out about stuff in the same way as you are, what you do.
Yeah.
But there is a way of actually running it almost as if it's a magazine. And I think that's what we're doing now.
But also it's a discursive space, and I think people are really looking for that. So when we show the film as well, and we have a Q&A afterwards, people really want to have these discussions, and you can see that the interest. And because it's also attracting a different age range, so you do have those kind of different experiences. So the other night we showed it in Yeovil, and, for the older people in the audience, like Simon saying, they can remember pre-internet. You can remember a time when, the welfare state was more supportive. You could find a job. You could choose not to find a job. So you have this kind of different way of thinking about now, because you've had this time when things were more open and supportive, I guess. And then we had a young woman who was in her 20s, and to hear her talk really was quite emotional, because she was talking about, well, what do I do? There's kind of like no hope, How do I get more hopeful? And I don't really have the answer. So that was quite impactful to me anyway.
Yeah. So generationally, what's interesting is that we are, be interested with your listeners. We're actually talking about what Mark Fisher referred to as public luxury in post-capitalist desire. So public luxury is, you might remember, you could go to a library, you could get a GP appointment the same day.
Well, public. I mean, the public good, isn't it? Really, I know luxury is almost for effect, but yeah, public good is all those things. It's sort of.
Yeah, it is. So
I remember being in I remember being in the British Museum and sitting in the big sort of open space that's not where they're showing stuff, and realizing I wasn't being bombarded with adverts. Like just stepping out of London into the British Museum, and because it was free to get in, obviously there was no barrier as long as you felt comfortable going in. But once in, you were it just dawned on me. I was sitting there having my coffee, going, "Yeah, there's no information. There's nothing. I'm not being hit with anything other than the building I'm in."
Yeah, I think also, I mean, you wanted to change that phrase public luxury to public good, because the word luxury, contains a lot in it, doesn't it?
It's loaded.
And the idea of public luxury feels like you shouldn't put those two words together, because luxury is seen as something that only really the wealthy can attain. And, you have to have worked hard enough in order to get this luxury. It shouldn't just be given to you. So I guess the revolutionary thought behind the phrase public luxury is, why not have luxury given to you? So why not?
Yeah, so we are not just making a film about Mark Fisher, as you probably gathered. This is an artwork that has a film inside it, but it's a political action as well. So we, Sophie and I, with you now, if you'll agree to this, we are campaigning to bring back public luxury across the whole of Gross Britannia tomorrow. That's what we want. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to argue with it. That's for certain.
No.
And like I say,
No.
I mean, I only it was only for definition that I just know that I knew the expression public good as a thing that I know we've been losing, taking fast as it were. But I'd not actually heard it described in public luxury, and I don't disagree as a term either. I think it's right. It's this idea, I mean, we're already hearing. I mean, it's interesting where you talked about people who've lived generations that have lived their life on the internet versus we've got a memory of times before the internet. And I remember I used to write for Days Confused in the early noughties. And I remember during that period, sort of some of the artists I was interviewing at the time, there was a lot of talk about, and this is like the early, the early stages of what we now know the internet. And it predates the smartphone, which I think is the sort of big leap in terms of how the internet kind of overtook our lives. Even then, there was talk of a return to authenticity, and it was quite twee things were happening at the time. It was just acoustic guitars or people doing knitting circles or something in a Williamsburg bar. But ultimately, it was about trying to connect with people as opposed to the internet. And I did I studied mass communication for a master's, and I remember at one point asking my lecturer, saying, "So what you're saying is the biggest?" This is in 2008, so again, it just predates the smartphone. Because I ended up I wrote a dissertation about whether UK could regulate the internet or not, and I concluded we could, but we wouldn't. And back then, it was the biggest form of rebellion you could have is just start making flyers and come away from. That was the conclusion I came to, is that by going paper, nobody can trace that like they can do with the minute you post a blog or you post an update on social media. And it's interesting. No,
you're right.
And it's interesting looking back at that time. I could not have predicted the pervasiveness of what is now the smartphone. I mean, the smartphone helped me find you guys. So on the one hand, there's a positive side to it, but the negative side to it is just go on Twitter and see all the blue ticks of what they're doing to monetize just unnecessary confusion, misinformation, and whatnot.
Well, we used to enjoy Twitter, but now the thing that's replaced it is an evil platform that needs to be regulated against and stopped immediately by very brash people who don't take any shit from anybody, because actually encouraging abuse and pornographic material is a subject for definite regulation.
Absolutely. Pulling together this as a if we look at this as a documentary, which is to be consumed as a film as we know to watch it. Now, it may well be that at the end of it is a call to arms. But when you were pulling it together and it's interesting having learnt now that it was made through contributions via social media. What do you remember being the sort of storytelling challenges of making the film? We are making a film about Mark Fisher in terms of what I watched.
Yeah, one of the challenges was that Mark took his own life. So the people around him, his friends and family, obviously, that's a very emotional space, and lots of people still carrying a lot of trauma around that. So to start off with, contacting people, we had to do it very slowly and delicately, and just really think about that when we were contacting his friends and family. And also another one in shaping who was in the film is soon after we started talking about making a film about Mark Fisher, we found out that somebody else was making a film about Mark Fisher. So that was something to bear in mind. And also another thing was that we didn't have a budget either. So we decided just to go ahead and make this film. So that dictated some of our story making choices. So really we worked with what was at hand in terms of interviews. But slowly the network opened out. And, once we got the trust of, let's say, one person, they would introduce us to another person. So that slowly developed over time. We only took a year to make the film, which was quite fast.
That is fast.
And it is. And a lot of that time was taking up by building these relationships. And in a way, the narrative changed and generated over time. We didn't start off with this script that we were then going to go and film. We started off with a series of ideas and looking at different stages of Mark's life and how his ideas and theories had developed. And then we started making each section of the film.
Yeah, and a key thing is that in our film, Justin Hopper plays Parkins, who is a character from an M.R. James ghost story. And Justin then became the narrator of the film. He's an American, but he has a great voice, and he actually has worked with a number of ghost box records, Belbury Polly and Belbury Polly, and he kind of started to shape the film a bit actually as a character.
Okay.
So when we said it's a metafiction, part of the first part of it is about Parkins. Because you've read the books, you will know in The Weird and the Eerie that the M.R. James ghost stories reference. So our film is a remake of the 1968 Jonathan Miller film about Whistle, My Lad, and I'll Come to You.
Yeah.
And although we're not filmmakers, we rematched the shots from Jonathan Miller's film on the beach.
Yeah, I noticed, and with the picking up of the whistle from the out of the ground.
So if you know that film and Jonathan Miller's films,
then
you'll know that we are actually being playful with film vernacular as a part of the making of the film about Mark Fisher. But then what happens is that Parkins becomes the ersatz narrator. He tells the story as a ghost from a book all the way through, and then he returns us himself to fiction, because basically he's pissed off with being in the permacrisis. He's like, I've had enough of this. I want to get back to being in a ghost story. So it is a kind of slight joke, really. But, however, we don't explain all of this. So some people don't like this film because we don't explain all of the references. It's not a kind of Disneyfication, da-da-da-da-da approach as you...
It's not a standard documentary, so you have this fiction running through it as the thread. And then, we do have interviews with different people. So there's Andy Beckett, who's a Guardian journalist. There's Jodie Dean, who's an American academic, and she was a colleague of Mark Fisher's. And there's Adam Jones, who used to work for Zero and Repeater Books, and he's a philosopher. And then there's Sophie Johnson, who's a writer. And also Mickey Aurora was an interesting part of the film. So she is a Canadian artist that we actually met through Instagram, and she was brilliant. So her work as an artist was really informed by Mark Fisher's unfinished piece of writing, Acid Communism. So she talks very eloquently in the film about the impact of his writing on her work. So we have a range of different interviews of people that we contacted, and also that came to us through the Instagram account.
Brilliant. One last question then before we get into the three films. When you're making a documentary of any sort, there's a perception before you start, and then there's a discovery while making the film. What do you think you discovered about Mark and his work that you didn't appreciate before making the film that you now appreciate now?
Well, for me, it would be, you used the word affective in English, which is AFFECTIVE. So he constantly uses this word affective. And I thought, what does he kind of mean about, what's he going on about? And actually and then I suddenly reread various bits of K-Punk, and what he means by affective is that things that have literally a physical effect on your sensorium, they affect you emotionally. And I think that's Mark Fisher's writing sort of writ large, is that he opens the door to thinking about how things affect you emotionally. That's a massive thing in his writing. Yeah.
I think for me, what I've learned is the really big impact that Mark Fisher as a person and his writing has had on people. Because one of the biggest reason for the success of the film and the reason why it's going around the world is people just love his writing. You know, they're really excited to see a film about Mark Fisher and his writing. And also through talking to people that knew him well, or just, you know, bumped into him or just emailed with him. Like, he was a really kind and generous person. So we've tried to echo that generosity in the way that we communicate with people, in the way that we've made the film. So I think one of the biggest things I've learned is about Mark Fisher, the man, I guess, and how much people really enjoy his writing and enjoyed him as a person.
We Are Making a Film About Mark Fisher is available now. So if you want to remind people how they can keep up to date with screenings or where it might be available, what website do we look at?
Yeah, sure. So go to closeandremote.net. You can see the full tour. And you can also follow Instagram at Mark Fisher Film to see everything else.
We are now moving into 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Simon and Sophie have given me 3 choices. Now, this is new for the podcast because I haven't done a shared 3 before. So you are my first. So what you've kindly done is you've picked 1 film each, and then you've selected one that you consider a shared film that had impact and memories for you. So for those that haven't heard this before, the format is simple. I have a timer here, and it runs for 5 minutes. And when we hear this sound, you can hear that at your end, okay? That means 5 minutes are up, and we move on to the next film. Does that sound like what you've signed up for?
Definitely. Yeah. 100.
Brilliant. Okay. Right then. First off is Agne Varda's 2000 documentary, The Gleaners I, where she films and interviews gleaners in France in all forms, from those picking fields after the harvest to those scouring dumpsters of Paris. Fun fact, in 2016, the film appeared at 99 in the BBC's list of 100 greatest films of the 21st century. And then in 2022, and we'll be returning to this list, it debuted at 67 on the critics' poll of Sight and Sound's list of the greatest films of all time. So tell us, as this is the shared one, why this film had such a impact and holds memories for you.
Well, it's a film that we watched fairly recently, actually. Watched other Agnes Varda films. So another particular favourite is Vagabond. So watch that one too.
Okay.
But The Gleaners I is later on in her career, and it's the first time that she uses a digital camera. So it's got a different vibe to it. It's much more, you know, she's got a handheld digital camera. So the shots are quite different from previous films. And what we found out also, having watched it, is she also went about making the film in a similar sort of way to the way that we made the film. We Are Making a Film About Mark Fisher. So she used her network of friends of friends of friends to find the people, the gleaners, to appear in her film. So she was interested in modern day gleaners. So that's basically people who go out and pick up leftover things that people don't want. In the past, it was usually women going onto the fields after the harvest and picking up the spare bits of corn or potato or carrots, whatever. But she was interested in modern day gleaners, and they're still there. People still go out into the fields and pick up after the harvest. There's not so much left there now because of modern machinery, but it was also looking at people who might go and pick up vegetables after the fruit market, you know, I guess bin divers as well. So people doing gleaning for different reasons, because they needed to do it or because they were interested in, you know, being more environmental, or perhaps doing it more artistically, like gleaning for materials for their artworks. So she talks to a whole range of different people. And one of the things that really struck me about the film is you kind of you get you kind of get a vibe of who she is as well as a filmmaker and as a person, because she's sort of part of it. But she's not part of it, say, like other more in your face, like, I don't know, John Ronson kind of like documentaries. You don't really see her in it, but you can see the subject's reaction to her. And her character is part of the film, and she kind of does it in a way where she just, because she's at a stage in her career, she made it, I think, in her 70s. So she's got a lot of, experience. She just makes the film. She just makes it.
Yeah. So I think this film helped us we are making a film about Mark Fisher, because we're artists first and we like making films. And it's very can-do, and it's very about the idea of emergent making. Yeah. So I don't think she knew what was going to happen. No. And there's a really good scene in it where the camera's dangling down and the lens cap's dangling down. She put that in the film. So there's a kind of deconstruction, if you will, of filmmaking. And in our film, we've got a few shots that are actually quite ropey. And if you're a professional filmmaker, you would have not used them. But we put them in because we, particularly with filming scenes of crowds at protests, actually we wanted to give more of a loose feel about how that is, how you are, more immersive. So I think this film she made is very immersive, because you just get captured into this world, and you're kind of like carried along by the fact that that she's trying stuff out and seeing what happens. I think in what we do, Sophie and I are really keen on, we like this idea that John Cage came up with.
Finish your thought, Simon. Go on. The alarm's gone off.
Well, John Cage, he says what we seek to do is organise a situation where anything can happen. And that's how we work like every project.
Okay. Right then, Sophie, we're going to move. The second film on the list is your choice.
Yes.
We are talking about Chantal Ackerman's psychological drama, Jeanne Dielman von Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles, about a lonely widowed housewife who does her daily chores, takes care of her apartment where she lives with a teenage son, and turns the occasional trick to make ends meet. But something happens that changes her safe routine. Fun fact is that Jeanne Dielman's obsessive and exacting ritualistic behaviour was inspired by the director's mother, Natalie Ackerman. And in 2022, on that Sight and Sound list that I quoted before for the Gleaners I, Jeanne Dielman was ascended to number 1 in the list of greatest films of all time, which I still feel a crime myself that I've not managed to watch it yet. So this is yet another prompt that I should watch it. But please tell me, please tell me the impact and the memories this film holds. But what first of all, how did you come to see the film? Because until that list got published, I had no awareness of the film. So how did you become aware of the film and to see it first time around?
Yeah, sure. So again, it was quite recently. I wasn't aware of the film either. So a friend of mine, Angela, invited me to go to cinema about 6 months ago to go and watch the film. So I'm really recent to it.
Oh, brilliant.
So I went to my local art cinema and sat there and was just blown away, actually. I mean, the first fun fact about the film is Chantal Ackerman was only 24 when she made this film.
Okay. Yeah.
I was thinking about what I was doing when I was 24. I wasn't anywhere near making a film that would go into the top 100 of films of all time. Anyway, so it's really slow film. It's 3 hours, 20 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And it's like an example of slow filmmaking.
Yeah.
So, and also unusually in filmmaking, it's got no close-ups, it's got no tight shots. So all the shots are mid shots or long shots, and they're very structured shots. So a lot of the time, it's of 3 days in this woman's life, in Jeanne Dielman's life.
Yeah.
So mostly we see her making food, washing up, doing the housework in these very static shots. So a lot of the time she's filmed in her kitchen, and there's just like two angles, and she's doing everything perfectly. She washes up after she's cooked. She puts everything away. It's kind of a very ritualistic, balletic kind of movements she does. And then every afternoon she receives a man who pays her for sex. So again, it's very ritualistic. The man will come in, she hangs up his coat, then they go into the bedroom. You don't see anything that happens in the bedroom. And then the man leaves, and then her son comes home. She's got like an older teenage son, comes home. They've got what seems like quite a bit of a strained relationship. She makes his dinner. He goes to bed on a fold-out bed in the front room, and then the day repeats. And then on the second day, things go slightly wrong, but only minusculely, like when she goes out to her cafe, there's someone sitting in her seat, so she doesn't go into the cafe. When she's sitting at home, the milk's spoiled. So small things start going wrong. And it's really gripping, and the tension really builds, and you just don't know why, because it's slow and it's just showing the mundane, and it's got this sense of horror. And I've never seen a film, and I'm sure I never will, where soup tureen takes on this real sense of horror. So after she gets paid by the men who have paid her for sex, she takes the money, she lifts the lid off this large soup tureen that's in the front room and puts the money in there and puts it back on again. And it's this sort of large, bulbous tureen, and there's something about it. It's just like consuming this money that she's made and doing this act, which you're not quite sure whether she really wants to be doing it or not. And you kind of learn through the process of the film that she's a war widow, and she goes to collect her war pension. She's obviously come down in the world in terms of where she lives, because her son doesn't have his own bedroom. So she's being a prostitute in order to support herself and her son. And then on the third day, I don't want to spoil the film for people who might watch it.
There's our 5 minutes. You want to finish that thought?
Yeah, so on the third day, it comes to its denouement. But I'm going to stop there, because I would say go and watch it. Go and watch it in the cinema as well. You won't get the same effect sitting watching it at home. Go and watch it in the cinema, and, it just blow you away. Indeed.
I think we'll never...
That sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. And I'm sort of semi-relieved that it's something you've seen recently, because it is, I've been pointing it, it's almost like the thing of, I mean, how would you be ready for a film that's been billed as the greatest film ever? It's sort of it's unfair on the film in many ways. It is really. And the way you describe it, actually, I love the idea of slow and gripping. Slow cinema being gripping. Yeah. It was. Yeah. No, I
didn't know it was the greatest film before I went to see it. I was quite glad I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah. No, it's a loaded gun on the film. It's not fair. No. Right. Right then, Simon. We're going to slip into your choice now, which is David Lynch's 1977 debut feature film Eraserhead, a body horror, a dark comedy, a psychological drama, or a plain old horror. In many ways, it's an absurd character study as we follow Henry Spencer as he tries to survive his industrial environment, his angry girlfriend, and the unbearable screams of a newborn mutant child. Fun facts about this film: when the production on the film took longer than expected, David Lynch ended up sleeping in the same room used as Henry's bedroom for over a year. And the film's tone was supposedly shaped by David Lynch's time living in a troubled neighborhood in Philadelphia. That Lynch and his family spent 5 years living in an atmosphere of violence, hate, and filth, he said. The area was rife with crime, inspiring the bleak urban backdrop of Eraserhead. But tell us, Simon, why does this film have such an impact and hold memories for you?
Yes, I did struggle with this, and we had a few emails with you, because I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this, but I really do love Stalker. That's probably my favourite film. And Eraserhead meets the criteria of your show, if you will.
Yeah.
And that has affected my life. So I chose that over Stalker, but for the same reasons that Sophie described earlier. I find Stalker a compelling film because it is very slow and it breaks the mold of how film is made. But with Eraserhead, I first saw that shortly after it came out, and I was at art school, and I'd have been in my kind of like late teens, and I had no idea that you could make films like this, actually. So Eraserhead for me was what I would call a permissive film. It made me understand that you can do whatever you want with this medium. And I think the other thing about David Lynch's work is that, I do paintings, I do watercolors of really full-on situations. So I think what I understood about David Lynch is that he is an artist painter coming into film as a maker, and as you described in your opening, Eraserhead is a kind of film that was made at the beginning of his work, but it is very, very compelling. It's beautifully shot. I had no idea how this was made, but the reason it affected me is because I was a young person and I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I was in punk bands. I loved playing music. I was trying to teach myself to play thrash guitar in my bedroom. And so it sort of really retracts me back to the late 70s and my youth and what I was trying to do with my life. But the scene I want to describe is, I'm sure you'll know it, which is the woman in the radiator, or the girl in the radiator. And there is that moment where he's just kind of lying on the bed. And I think there's a close shot of his face and the music and the industrial humming of the building and everything. And then we go down into the big radiator, the cast iron radiator, and then we sort of zoom in. And there she's there. She's on the podium, and she's got that sort of like golf ball sort of appendage on her face.
Yeah.
And then the twinkling music starts, and she starts singing. And for me, it's just like really compelling as a piece of cinema, but as an artwork, it's a piece of performance art inside of film. And I think that's what I was looking at. For example, I played in punk bands, and I met people like Lol Coxhill, the alto sax experimental player at that time. And all of this sort of opened my eyes to what we would call experimental art, and the excitement of creativity. And to be honest, from that period on, I've just like cracked on. I've never had a proper job in my life. I've been lucky enough to scrape by down to 50p, but that film sort of gave me a sort of template of weirdness to work with.
Does that feel like a point to finish on? Do you want to finish that?
Yeah, it does. Perfect. Yeah.
That was like you'd rehearsed it. I think I saw it on Channel 4 the first time I ever saw it, late night, and I had no idea what I just watched. I was not ready. I was not ready for it in one way, shape, or another. But like you say, it being exposed to something like that can then open up you to the ideas of what certainly what a film can be. I mean, I had no idea that you could be so obtuse.
I still don't really know what that film's about, and then a great friend of mine is really into film, like proper film buff stuff, and I think you probably picked this up through the interviews, that me and Sophie aren't those kind of people. We are thinking about artistic practice and making. And my friend said to me, "Oh, what are your favourite films?" I said, "I really love Mulholland Drive." She said, "Oh, I can't understand that film. I can't understand what it's on about, and I don't get it." And I think, but that's actually what I like about Mulholland Drive. It's actually a film about the film industry without telling you what it's about, and that's why it's compelling. I think most of Lynch's films hang in that space where they require you to, again, work with mood and what Mark Fisher calls the affectivity. They are very affective films, and they're not linear narrative things. And I know that Mulholland Drive really pisses people off, but that's such a great thing to be able to do that, to piss people off with such a great film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, look, thank you for sharing those 3 films.
No props.
Much appreciated. Let us remind people then, we are making a film about Mark Fisher, are doing the rounds, as it were, so people can keep track of where they can see it on the website. Do you want to give the website address again, please?
Yeah, sure. If you go to www.closeandremote.net, you can see the full touring schedule, and you can also follow the film on Instagram at Mark Fisher Film.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'll put that in the show notes, and it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving us your time on the Britflix podcast.
Thank you.
Really loved it. And by the way, your French was excellent, I thought.
Oui.
Yeah. Your accent français was really...
Très bien.
Yeah, excellent. Oui, très bien.
While I'm still recording, I'll let you into a trade secret there. I Googled, how do I pronounce that film title? And there is a YouTube of somebody explaining, just saying the film title and why it's easy to say. And then, but yeah, I had to practice. I'm not French, so thank you. That's much appreciated.
But you do your homework, you see? You're a lad that does his homework.
Do remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more movies that impacted your life. And if you want to, I'd love to know what your favourite movies are, what your fondest movie memories are. So please share your favourite movies that impacted your life on Twitter. Look for @LeightonRocks. And you can always leave me a review, 5-star preferably. And in your review, tell us which 3 films impacted your life. Best ones get read out on the podcast.
Every hero strikes out on their adventure for a different reason.
To prove myself worthy of my mother's praise.
To write my own story and discover who I really am.
To prove to my family that I am more than they believe me to be.
To revive the God that has chosen me.
But when the fragile balance of the world is in jeopardy, and sinister forces move in the darkness, heroes will be tested, pushed to their limits and beyond. And it will be left to them to determine if they are up to the task. There is a darkness rising. Will they be able to overcome the challenges and meet this evil head on?
For my God.
For my story.
For my freedom.
For the world.
To restore the balance. Modified Role Season 2, The Chronicles of Erin, a D&D 5e actual play podcast. New season, new characters, new story. Find us on all the usual podcasting apps or at modifiedrole.com.